DraftScience video. Yay. Anyway, I think I'll do with some comments, so I figure I'll do that. So we're somewhere, 3 videos ago or so, and so somebody brought up this. By the way, I wanted to show you Scott Arerson's explanation of quantum mechanics. Yeah, it's too bad you don't have a link to that specific thing, because the guy talks about a lot of different stuff. But anyway, I did look at his blog, and he does make some point about quantum computing not being exactly what people think it is. Yes, he doesn't say it, but I didn't read everything he wrote. But yeah, quantum computing should be thought of as maybe nano computing. That you might get some advantages in time, more miniaturization. Carrying data on atoms would be quite convenient, but you're not going to get any shortcuts to the truth. So I like that he says that. Anyway, alright. So, yeah, now, there was some show mentioned, closertotruth.com, some PBS show. Yeah, I couldn't see any episodes at all. You got to pay for it. But an awful lot of the episodes seem to be about stupid questions like, does God have a penis? I mean, whatever. Anyway. So then this Truth Quest guy is supposed to be making some videos, he said in a newer post. He says he's come to similar conclusions, but I also think that Einstein was wrong about the speed of light as well. I don't know about that, as his gravity bent space bullshit. Yeah, the bent space thing I think is a real problem. The invisible force thing is a real problem in physics. They really have to get away from this idea that it's legitimate to say that something happens over here, it does magic, and the effect that happens over here. And you really do have to, it's kind of important, let's just say that, to explain how that happens, not to just say it happens. So I understand saying it happens because you can't when you don't have access to any way to convey the information. But I think they did have access, and they just what can I say? They haven't been clever enough to realize that people 300 years ago understood a method, a means of access, and it's called gravity. But anyway, this Dominic Hughes person is really quite irritating. I wish you'd just go away. You don't make any sense, and I don't like you. Yeah, so go away. Silly. I don't know, whatever. You have a bunch of mumbo jumbo. You listen to a bunch of silly people, and you're just spouting silly crap. Yeah, it's silly. Go away. I don't know about physics. I wonder if Gary's pubic, this is the pubic hair, is as blonde as the hair on his head, or darker. Just being honest. That got 3 up ratings. Now that's just kind of silly. But to answer the question, it's like my eyebrows. In certain light, I don't have any. That's the answer to your question. In certain light, I don't have any. Anyway, so this logical imperialist guy is a real annoying prick. Troll fucker. LOL. Oh, hey, wait a minute. I wanted I want to do that vegan one he did. Is that thing? He always starts with this LOL shit. Where the hell's the, once you had that photon made up 2 quantons. Yeah, this is the one where I changed things. I already answered that one. Let's see. LOL, here it is. A vegan arguing that animals can't feel, or some animals can't feel. LOL, a vegan arguing that animals can't feel, or some animals can't feel. Yeah, a vegan arguing that brains make feelings, that feelings are turn-offable and turn-onable. Okay, so they're obviously not a crude mechanism. You can't turn crude things on and off. You can only turn complex things on and off. Only complex things have on-off switches. So that kind of gives you a clue that you sort of have to have a specific kind of thing to have a thing called a feeling, shithead. It just doesn't come out of nothing. Again, like a magical force. Feelings aren't created by nothing. They're created by something. And the point is, it's created by a complex neural mechanism. And if that neural mechanism isn't working, there's no feelings taking place, asshole. asshole. LOL. What's your theory? LOL. I mean, really, laughing my ass off waiting to hear your theory, crazy fuck. So where's the frontier when suddenly something jumps from not feeling to feeling? It's called the brain. That's one of the big frontiers, jackass. It's called a neuron, fuckface. Yeah, that's right. Animals that don't have neurons aren't feeling. Okay? And then the ones that don't have enough neurons to make the theater, the on-off switch, they're not feeling either. Because without an on-off switch, feeling wouldn't be any use. Correct? You couldn't learn from a feeling. And you certainly can't learn from a feeling if you don't have any memory space. You sort of get it that a computer isn't a hard drive or a CPU or a memory chip. That you have to have all of those fucking things, jackass. Can you figure that out? Man, these rude people just fucking, there just ought to be a fly swatter, accessible on the internet. Because these people are fucking flies. They just lay maggots. They're just dirty, filthy, stinking, maggot-laying motherfucking pieces of shit. No useful value. Like assholes call themselves horse cock. Swat them. I don't know about physics. Oh yeah, that's the stupid. Yeah, that's the asshole who asked the stupid question. Right, I really hate people. So here's the troll again, logical imperialist. LOL, insulting famous physics and tagging your video with obscene messages invoking the guy's name. Yeah, like, that's how somebody would do, like, if Obama, let's go find out how many videos have Obama in the name. Yeah, I shouldn't reference the idiot, the emperor, I don't think is wearing any clothes. I shouldn't reference his name ever, right? Ever. So whether you agree or disagree with somebody, you're just not allowed to mention any celebrity's name because then you're just whoring. Right, fuckhead? Gee, I mean, you're such a weasel. Way to become YouTube celebrity in the crazy person category. So I did answer his comment with a great comment. I mean, he posted this before he even watched the video. So people gave 4 thumbs up to somebody who posted a comment before he even watched the video. So yeah, comment was posted before the video could play. Way to be an asshole in the mega troll category. I think that's an adequate explanation. I don't know what the dog do, guys. Sophistry holds little weight to some. I don't even know what that. I don't know how that's even a meaningful reference, but whatever. I don't. So people say stuff. I mean, this just another YouTuber guy I like. Ha ha ha! Straight up styling on him. What does that mean? I don't really want to know. I really don't. I mean, people are trying to be funny, I guess. I'm just not in the mood. I mean, I'll be accidentally funny in videos now and then, but I mean, really, I just fuck funny. Anyway, gravitational lensing occurs with massive bodies that don't possess an atmosphere. Okay, so there we go. Nothing doesn't possess an atmosphere. I mean, that's one of my arguments. You're leaking an atmosphere right now. Right now, there's a ton of stuff bubbling at the surface of your body. And there's all kinds of ions and shit percolating out of you. You have an atmosphere, an ionosphere. And the sun has a huge atmosphere when you really think about it. If you think about the ionosphere, and you think about even the corona, you think about the intense, particle-dense, and that's really what all that matters in physics, right? Physics is about particles, not just chemistry. So maybe the chemists have owned the idea of atmosphere. But really, atmosphere is something existing where there should be nothing. That's an atmosphere, fuckhead. And I think it was a perfectly reasonable remark I made. That lensing is occurring in, I've already explained the theory, so again, your argument is negated by the very fact that I've already explained what I mean by atmosphere, and I've already explained that it's light's being diffracted by the dense, force controlled, gravity imposed, density of particles that exists around large gravitational bodies. Shithead. Oh, I hate these fuckers. You know, he's got this little magical triangle. If I understand something, he doesn't understand shit. So then he talks about tachyons travel faster than the speed of light. Photons. They're completely made up. This is all Star Trek bullshit. This has nothing to do with reality at all. And he posted like it's real science. No, that would be called a counter theory of ludicrousy. Okay, there's just absolutely no point in arguing. When you're arguing why somebody else's new theory is no good, you don't argue how it's no good based on a Star Trek argument. You make an argument to the actual reality that it doesn't fit in. Stupid fuck. I'm not arguing other people's wacky theories here, am I? No, because there's no point in arguing their wacky theories while I'm defending my wacky theory. You stupid fuck. God, people just, you're so fucking obnoxiously incapable of making anything called a rational argument. Okay. So so this guy did point out, this one good guy here, this whatever this chick, did point out that this guy's a dogmatic, rude motherfucker. Anyway, and he did point out to the other guy that he's talking absolute shit. So here's the logical empiricist again. I mean, I'm glad I'm getting some comment, but this is comment from an asshole, so this is not very valuable. He obviously doesn't know shit about shit. Let's see. Black holes do not make the slightest sense without quantum thermodynamics. Well, that's just absolute nonsense. Why do you need 16 probability states? Basically, that's all you're talking about. Or a graduated probability states to create a black hole. Sorry, that's just an assertion that you'll never be able to defend. There's absolutely nothing about black holes that require there to be probability states, jackass. And general relativity. Well, you certainly don't need general relativity, because actually general relativity doesn't mean a motherfucking thing. It's about time, shithead, and there's nothing about time that's terribly relevant to a black hole either, fuckhead. You are still in effect defending classical physics. Well, I'm defending factual physics. That's right. Physics based on actual evidence, not just speculation. That's true. Actual confirmed stuff. So yes, a lot of Newton is really good stuff. That's right, jackass. Before 1910. In the 20th century, we all had to relearn physics. Well, that's your problem. And you really don't relearn Newton. All you do is recognize that Newton didn't take into account every single physical phenomenon in the universe. And the fact that there are a few phenomena he was not aware of, like the speed of light, like the existence of subatomic nuclear particles. Shit. You're going to say you're redoing physics? You're full of shit. Again, it's like saying redoing Darwin because you come up with punctuated equilibrium. You're not redoing anything, you jackass. Due to very general theories of nature. In 1990, they thought they had figured it all out essentially. Well, I mean, that again is this is another one of those cliche things people say, and it's just a lie. One guy, because one man, Bohr, I think, was quoted as saying something like, yeah, well, we got it all done. Because one guy says that, you say that's what all of physics thought. And I'm sure there was plenty of people, like Thomas Edison, for example, not a physicist, but he might as well have been, who understood there was lots of mechanical questions yet to be understood. There were a few unsolved problems, but nobody seriously doubted Newton's theories of gravity and light. And no one still seriously doubts them, you stupid fuck. Again, this is just so goddamn idiotic. Newton's inverse square law hasn't changed. Newton's fucking ellipse rules haven't changed. None of the fucking rules Newton observed and figured out have changed, you jackass. You've merely augmented them one tiny goddamn fraction. I mean, shit. Based on the fact that the sun happens to be a very complex nuclear engine, and therefore the effects on the orbit of Mercury are going to have a wobble in them. Wow, Newton couldn't figure that out, and therefore you throw Newton in the fucking bin. What an asshole you are. I mean, the guy was only 1,000,000 times smarter than you, and here you are telling people, oh yeah, Newton was a dumb motherfucker. He didn't know shit. He knew 99% of the game, you dumbass. Then came the age of revolutions, and we learned very much in only a short time. No, you made up a big pile of shit in a very short time. You made up Copenhagen, you made up the photons reading your mind, and you made up quantum computing, and you made up a bunch of shit that has absolutely no tethering to anything real. You can't do it. Your problem. Yeah, well, whatever. No, it's your problem, asshole, because you're living in a lie, and you're promoting the lie in an obnoxious and dogmatic way, which makes you kind of a fascist. A stupid fascist douchebag in defense of fucking idiocracy, you motherfucker. You're an idiot defending idiocracy. You're the part of the problem, motherfucker, not part of the solution, shit for brain. You are just too dumb. No, you're too dumb or too dogmatic. No, you're too dogmatic, you fascist religious kook. Okay, you've got some little guy that you want to suck on his weenie, scientist guy, tells you something and you think it's the truth because you're not smart enough to figure out, well, maybe that guy doesn't know what he's fucking talking about. Maybe he just read in a fucking book too. Maybe he just read some quote in a goddamn book about how physics is all done, and therefore he thought every physicist thought all of the questions have been answered. And Benjamin Franklin doesn't need to bother with that whole kite thing 70 years later or whatever. Well, 30 years before. Well, 130 years before. Then came the age of revolutions. Problem too dogmatic to reassess your most cherished beliefs. Well, again, I reassessed them from the very beginning. I never, as soon as I saw the equation E equals mc squared, unlike you retards, okay, I wasn't thinking that energy is converted into like bricks, you know, or like light turns into, I don't know, cement. It goes inside of an atom and hides there, and it's not light anymore. No, I understood E equals mc squared right from the very fucking beginning to mean, yes, the fucking atom itself is full of these little bits that are still moving the speed of light, and they're going to, at some point, maybe get released. And that's what it means. So, as a fucking 12-year-old kid, I was capable of understanding it in a more meaningful context than you fucking retard, who thinks photons go into atoms and then turn into, like, I don't know, wash and wear clothing or something, and they just hang on the rack like a permanent press shirt or something. Oh yes, the photon went in, we turned it into a shirt, and then we put it in the closet on the rack. Yeah, that doesn't happen, retard. Anyway, so there was no cherished beliefs. My only cherished belief is that, yeah, you really should have evidence for shit. Everybody else has moved on yeah, and has changed their theories from high school, in college, or as an autodidactic. Yeah, what do you think you are? You're an idiot in idiocracy, you motherfucking cunt. You're a propagandizing, trolling, motherfucking rude, stupid prick who doesn't have the guts to put a face on your icon and have a straight-up argument because you don't know shit, jackass. You're a dumb motherfucker, and you're a rude one to boot. You are a very small minority who want us to reject progress. Well, that's just a lie. I'm saying that you are the ones inhibiting progress because you've got the truth fucking perverted, jackasses, and that's maybe why your nuclear plants melt down. And that's maybe why you can't do anything without fucking up, is because you don't have any fucking respect for the real fucking physics and you think it's all magical forces. You stupid shit. Anyway, go back to the absolute certainties. Yes, well, guess what? The universe is made out of absolute certainties, jackass. There is no free will. There's no free anything. There's no spontaneous anything. There's no fucking goddamn random anything. Everything's cause and motherfucking effect, shithead. And that's what I believe in, and that's what the evidence points to. And you're the asshole talking religious shit. So I didn't really want this video to go this way. I shouldn't have read comments. That was a mistake. Okay. So now I'll get to the real video. I probably should do a separate video just because this one's now tainted by this argument. But I wanted to talk some more about this black hole shit. So I don't think I need to hold the camera. I don't think I do. See if it'll stay. I don't know why it's not staying. It used to stay. But things change, right? Yeah. All right. So the first thing I want to get to was the idea, that light is inside the matter. That the speed is still in there. And again, and just to validate this argument, that this theory that you could that you could release light as a piece of matter is moving, and it releases light in the opposite direction, that creates shift. So the problem would be is if there's a body descending into a black hole and it starts releasing light, it's going to get redshifted into radio waves, and it might get redshifted so heavily that it'll be radio waves so long that we don't have a receiver that can do a 500-mile radio wave. The photons will just be too distant from each other. The quantons, the half a photon that makes up a photon, the two elements of the photon, the two real particles of the photon, what make a photon, will be too far apart for us to get a signal. And so they could be, the black hole certainly could be radiating some energy, but it's going to be the form of what we call gravity. It's going to be in the form of photons without a frequency, and it's going to be just restored back to the original matrix of pressure. So it's just going to add to the gravitational pressure that exists in the universe. So I certainly think that's a possibility for black holes. So that would be an explanation of what happens to the stuff falling in. Is that as soon as it starts falling in, it starts gaining acceleration. As it starts accelerating, the matter will not produce light unless it's producing cosmic rays. It would have to produce something at a very high frequency because the redshift is going to convert it into something else. So a black hole will not create visible light because the matter moving very fast won't be capable of producing visible light. It'll be redshifted into something less visible. Now the opposite effect, as you go through the black hole, right here's your black hole, as you go through it, okay, say you're radiating energy the opposite direction, the direction you're going in, then it's going to be blue shifted, right? And so that adds another complexity because it can come out either way. It either comes out with so fine a frequency, cosmic rays, that we don't have a camera that can reveal a picture of such things, or it's going to come out in some form that isn't decipherable because the wavelength's too long. So it's either too long or too short, but it's going to be in a form that we're not going to be able to perceive as something as easy to perceive as light. And so yes, you're still going to see it as black, even though it's producing perhaps a tremendous amount of energy. Now look at the sun, for example. The sun is burning, creating a tremendous amount of photons in the visible light spectrum, a ton of energy coming out of it, and yet it's a tiny fraction of the gravitational forces pushing things into it. So in spite of the fact that it has all this energy forcing things away from it, the gravity is still so much stronger than that energy, that the sun is still a huge gravitational in rather than an outer. So in spite of the fact that the sun is radiating a ton of stay away from me energy, pushing away force, it's still a net by a long shot okay, by a really long shot. Even on the surface of the sun, where the big giant flames are shooting out, the force of gravity is still overwhelming these expellatory forces, and that's why we're again back to the creation of an atmosphere, and an atmosphere is merely the fact that you don't ever have a place where something can gain escape of velocity. So shit shoots out of the sun at tremendous velocities and momentums, and yet they still curl back in, because that's the bigger force is the gravitational force. And that could be what the black hole is doing right now. The black hole could be just radiating a ton of radiation, but that radiation is a small fraction of the amount of radiation that's in the universe itself. And the radiation in the universe is doing the in thing, while this specific black hole radiation is doing the out thing. So it has a ton more out than in. But this push-pull effect, which is really just a blocking of gravity, again, let's understand that that's all it is. It's just a changing of the balance of the gravitational force through this shadowing effect. That's all that's the whole universe is made out of. You know, let's see how to explain this. What creates matter is the tying of these things to each other, the creating relationships. And the relationships aren't necessarily more dense than the existing field. So there could be more energy. In a sense, theoretically, matter could be less dense in terms of its directional information, in terms of how many fish it actually possesses, because now they're organized, than the field of fish it's in itself. So that's, you have to sort of think about it as, I can't make an explicit example, but I can make a kind of take the ocean. We're back to the fish analogy. I can't make the fish equal size, which they really are. But if you think about like plankton, there's a ton of this plankton in the water, and the fish are swimming in the plankton. The fish are a small percentage of the mass of the ocean. And in some sense, the fish could be argued to be less massive than the ocean around them, like a cup of water and a cup of fish. The cup of water could weigh more than the fish, because the fish could have air in it, all kinds of stuff. So in a way, the fish isn't necessarily a representation of more. It's just a representation of order and structure, where the cup of seawater doesn't have any order or structure. So another thing I wanted to get to was the argument of particle. I mean, these are all little things that I have to get to, like this has to be part of the order or structure of understanding. So the first argument is that E equals mc squared, which means that energy is still energy inside the atom. It's something moving the speed of light goes into an atom and stays there, it's still moving the speed of light, and that has to be accounted for. And the second argument would be particle. We use this word all the time, and it's been applied to things, and it's just been sloppy. It's sort of like physics sort of made the mistake of having way too many standards for measuring a length or a distance. We have Kelvin and Fahrenheit and Celsius, and we got all this crap, and it just confuses things. Well, we've been using this word particle, and it's just applied to everything. And there's only one particle, though. That's what has to be understood, and that's this graviton, this quanton. And two quantons make a single photon. Obviously, you can have 10 gravitons in a row, and we see that as a photon. We see that as light coming from something. And we usually need more than one photon to actually see something. Our eye isn't sensitive enough. It needs a bombardment of a stream of light of a particular frequency. But it's the individual particles that make the light, and that those particles are what the universe is made out of. The light is just gravity with a frequency. And the only thing that can be called a legitimate particle, a quanton, a fundamental element, are these gravitons, these kinetic gravitons. And kinetic's important, because I want to get to that with the speed of light, and light and gravity. So by my argument, I'll draw a little picture. So by my argument, you have a beam of light, which is these gravitons with a frequency. And in this kinetic field, these gravitons could just move, because even though they're, like, say they interact with something going this way, the real effect is that, yeah, something leaves going this way and something leaves going this way. So the original photon, or graviton, will end up going that way. And this is the new one. So this one is now going this way. But that's the point. This one is going this way. Okay, so the frequency of the light would still be represented. It's just going to be represented by photons that were going some other way, that are now going this new way. So it could be one coming from this side or one from that side. It doesn't matter, but this frequency would still be on the same vector and on the same line, even though the original went some other place. You know, it's been knocked into little pieces all over the place. So these quantons end up over here and over here and over here. But the truth is the pattern will end up repeating. And so gravity couldn't really affect light. Because light is just a pattern. It's not the quantons itself that make light distinctive. It's the pattern that they arrive at, the frequency, their period between their impacts. That is their significant component, is their signature, so to speak. So there's no real room in this kinetic theory to be able to bend light. But the argument is that the key thing this light does that makes it different than gravity is that when it interacts with an electron, the frequency is very important, because the frequency will dictate it being able to interact with its own quanton. So the first one comes in, is in the right position when the second one shows up, for them to be caught in the orbit of the electron. So it's important to understand that the frequency is critical to them creating a gravitational force, a nuclear force, to be captured. So that's why photons are captured. And photons have to be manufactured or released by these very same electrons. That they're photon conservers and photon producers, and that's what they do as a mechanism. And so that's the only significant thing. And what has to be understood is that any imbalance to this system, any change in the shape of this electron or its orbits or any other thing, is going to change what ends up getting released, or what angle it's going to be released. So there's two things that the electron can change about the photon, the original energy that came in, the original photon. It can release it at a tighter frequency or a wider frequency, or it can release it at a different vector. It came in here, and because of energy added to this electron, some force moved it. Now its angular momentum, when it releases, see, it spun a little bit. Let's say it just spun a little bit. You know, this nucleus of this thing, it spun a little bit. Now the vector of the photon leaving will be different. So you could just argue that it comes in, it's able to maintain a couple of orbits, and then it's not maintained, and it's released at a different vector. That's diffraction. That's what causes diffraction. And that is what's happening to light in the atmosphere of strong gravitational bodies. Strong gravitational bodies are dense with the very particles, electrons, that and ionized atomic nucleus, I would argue, that probably also bend light. I would almost say that hydrogen atoms without electrons are probably quite capable of bending light, or capturing it for an orbit and then releasing it. Not permanently capturing it, but permanently distorting its vector. But anyway, let's just argue that it's dense around heavy gravitational bodies, are percolating a lot of energy, a lot of nuclear particles, and that those nuclear particles are diffracting the light. Okay. So yeah, so I did do a little bit of research on Hawking radiation, and it wasn't great just because there's no explanation for how the Hawking radiation isn't consumed by the own gravity of the black hole. I mean, there's just no explanation for why it's capable of having whatever the necessary momentum to actually escape. And radiation is a tricky word because much radiation is made out of particles that are bigger than photons. We call light radiation. We call lots of things radiation, and like alpha particles are not. They're not moving the speed of light. It's a different kind of. It's a subnuclear, but it's not a electromagnetic entity. But anyway, I would argue that yes, there's certainly probably plenty of black holes are burping out a lot of energy, but they're also still consuming a lot of energy in the form of matter, I would argue, unless they've been around for a while and they've cleaned the space around them. So the space around them is very clean, then they're not going to be burping too much, but they're still burning, so they're still going to lose energy. But you could argue that over time, probably more goes in to make them bigger than goes out to make them smaller. But as the universe cools down, you could see a scenario where the black holes, like the suns, would start to burn out because they have no source of new fuel, so to speak, quote unquote. But I would argue that the dynamics, thermodynamics of these giant bodies, it has some complexity to it in the sense that there's certain things that happen in their evolution. So if a sun is in a system that isn't feeding it, it dies. But if it's in a system that's still feeding it, lots is going in for a little bit that's going out, then yeah, the suns can become black holes. They can become dense enough that their gravity becomes strong enough that they no longer emit light because their gravity creates too much redshift. And so the visible light isn't visible light anymore, it's in some other form. Radio waves, whatever. Microwaves. So I think that's a perfectly viable the evolution, there's probably another word for that. What do you call the lineage? What's the progression? The progression of stars, from their creation to their full maturation, probably includes black holes, in my opinion. But it does get interesting. Just I did talk about it before, but I mean, there's lots to go into about exactly what happens at the center of these black holes, where there's no gravity. Where so much of the external pressure has been blocked that the atoms themselves are not being stably forced into their configurations, and the nuclear forces start to break down. That's a place where this gets really interesting, in my opinion. But anyway, but not really interesting. I just mean really interesting from a thermodynamic. Like, why do some suns blow up before they become black holes? And you could argue, why do some black holes blow up before they become, whatever they would become. But that's all has to do with some sort of probably, what's inside of them, what's the nature of the matter they have captured, and what's the nature of the particles that they now possess as part of their matter. But I think black holes can end up just being donuts in a weird way. They're not really, that's another thing that has to be understood. When two things, like gravitation, when you block something, gravity is this nuclear force, so you have to understand that the force is now affecting your atoms or your subatomic particles in a specific direction. And so all the directional exchanges will go from being this three-dimensional orbiting atom thing, and there's going to be a tendency to move that three-dimensional shape into a two-dimensional shape, in the sense that all the exchanges of direction between me and the gravitational body will force everything to start lining up with the key exchange that's taking place, which is the force on the opposite side is the force that's doing the changing. That's the force. I'm blocking the counterbalance. So I'm creating an imbalance of the force coming the other way. And that force will now create a bunch of directional arrows going specifically in one direction. And that specific exchange in one direction will reshape all the atoms to conform to that dynamic. And so I think that's what happens when you induce magnetism. You're inducing a shape change in the atoms, and that this happens in all these other physical materials. But the problem is their chemical structure is kind of complicated, and there's part of the shape change they can't accommodate. Their atoms can't line up, because to remain a matrix, you know, a solid object, they would have to lose all those atomic bonds that held the chemistry together. And the gravity's not strong enough to break those. Okay. But it would be in a black hole, is my argument. So anyway, I think that's enough for a video. So, until the next time. And until I can find somebody more reasonable than these assholes to argue with. I did send Bill Nye a question. You have to actually email the video, which turned out to be a bigger pain in the ass than I thought, because the first video I made was too big, and I didn't know, you know, my email programs have all these restrictions. I guess I have to start using some online email. My server company is, you know, they won't let me have an attachment bigger than 20 megs, which is really kind of irritating. But anyway, what's the difference? I mean, if I put the link on my own server, you're still going to have to serve the file, so what's the difference? Assholes. Anyway, so, yeah, till next time. And such.